I want to share with you an experience I had. It was in my late teens, going into my early 20s. It took a few years. And during that period of time, I had conversations and used to hang out with what we might call the angel of death, or the Grim Reaper, Mort. In many countries, religions, and cultures around the world, there are personifications of death, often depicted as a man or a woman, which comes to collect a person or a person's soul when they die. Anyways, this story is something that happened to me personally. I had a health condition that began when I was about 8 or 9 years old. It was a degenerative condition that affected the nervous system. The doctor at the time, when I was a little girl, said that this condition would probably take me out by the time I was in my mid-20s. He also explained and gave a list of symptoms to watch out for that would indicate the last stages of the disease. These were the inability to hold things in my hands, so if I was holding something, suddenly I would drop it. And also my body would start trembling continuously. As the nervous system degraded, it would be more and more difficult for me to speak or walk or do very basic things, and eventually I would no longer be able to use the nervous system and stop breathing and basically die. When I was about 17, I started noticing the first symptoms. I started dropping things that I was holding, and when I looked very closely at my hands, I could see the tiny little bit of shaking that was there continuously, and I couldn't stop it. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, my doctor said that I'd had until I was in my mid-20s. What's going on here? I'm only 17. It's not fair. Anyways, I started looking at the situation, and one night I woke up as I felt somebody sitting on my bed, and at first I thought it was my mom, because I lived with my mom at the time. But when I opened my eyes, there was this stranger sitting there. He was a man, and he was wearing a black suit and with white shirt and sunglasses, and he was very skinny, black hair, white. I looked at him for a while and he smiled, and I'm like, what on earth are you doing in my bedroom? And then I noticed that he was talking to me telepathically, so I thought, oh, okay. I wasn't unfamiliar with meeting with people who have died, and also I had had experiences with meeting an angel when I was a little girl. So having a being sitting on my bed in the middle of the night wasn't that out of my spectrum of reality or experience. I looked at him and I said, who are you? And he smiled and I said, I think you know who I am. I said, wait, are you Death? And he just smiled and said, yeah, you can call me that. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he says, oh, I thought we'd hang out because, you might be leaving with me soon. So I was like, whoa, Actually, I got a bit emotional at the time. I felt very powerfully and strongly, especially on my physical body elemental. He just sat there and kind of held space for me. After I calmed down, I got very curious about him. I basically started asking him questions, The first thing was my curiosity about how real he was. The whole thing about, are you a figment of my imagination type conversation. He said, well, I could say that I am, but actually I'm not a figment of your imagination. I do exist. And I said, so you're Death then? And he says, well, I'm kind of one of many beings that are categorized or named around the world as Death. And he was right, because a few years later I met another one, and this one was a lady, a woman. Going back to this particular one, I decided to call him just Death because it was simpler than calling him anything else. It was interesting in that he made me feel really comfortable about the whole transition thing, especially for my physical body elemental. It wasn't a discussion that I could easily have with anybody that I knew. My mother was not in a good psychological or emotional space for me to be able to talk to her about this, or even share that I was having the symptoms already, you know. So I didn't tell her anything. So basically there was nobody else except for Death. And he'd hang out with me, chill, and basically explained or made me feel that I wasn't going to be alone. A lot of the times, you know, when he would wake me up, because when he'd sit on my bed, he was, even though he was a skinny fellow, he appeared to be really, really heavy because my bed would lean towards where he was sitting. And I would ask him, you know, oh, is it tonight then? You know, am I dying tonight? He'd go, no, not tonight. We're going with conversations back and forth, saying, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be busy, you know, taking other people? I said, no, I have time. There wasn't really anything particularly meaningful about the conversations. It was mostly that he was there. And then, at some point, the conversation turned into the, are you ready, or do you really want to die right now? I decided that I wasn't ready and I didn't want to. There was a ton of things that I hadn't experienced yet. I had this intuition or this feeling that if I looked at my nervous system really, really deeply, I could understand what was going on in my mind. But as I did that, as I started focusing on my nervous system, I started seeing it like it was made out of liquid gold. And I could feel like a tingling and an energy going through my entire nervous system and my body. After that experience, I started having the symptoms reversing. The trembling started dissipating, going away, as well as the holding on to things or even going up and down the stairs was easier and things like that. It happened very gradually. And then one day, Death just didn't come back anymore. He was gone. The feeling was, to me, was, whoa, you know, this has been reversed, I'm not gonna die. And he's gone. I didn't see him again until many, many years later. I was in my mid-30s, I think it was. And I had a situation with one of my children who ended up in hospital. When I went into the room, who did I see sitting on their bed? It was Death. And he looked at me and said, hey, how are you doing? Long time no see. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You know, is my kid gonna die? I said, well, they haven't decided yet. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll have a word with them about that. So I had a word with my kid and I told them, you know, you stop messing about with Death. He will take you. If you're not careful, and you have to make a decision. Do you want to live? If you do, then don't play with Death anymore. And if you want to die, then just go ahead and go. But this back and forth or hanging out and playing with Death is not a healthy thing to do. They decided to stay, and sure enough, Death vanished. Didn't see him again after that. A few years later, like I said, I saw another personification of Death, but this time it was a lady. It was a different character, a different being, but her job was the same, and she had the same energy. She held space, she was compassionate, she was not in a hurry, and she made the situation feel safe. I know that Death is depicted in many different cultures as different things, and sometimes as a ruthless thing, you know, but I think maybe we may be looking at a personification of an entity that is possibly a transitional guide that is personified at a cultural level to help us transition, especially when it's taken a while or there's nobody there that can help us. So anyways, that was what I wanted to share with you. I haven't actually seen death after that. Sometimes, and in certain situations, I do feel their essence, particularly of the first one that I hung out for a long time with. But I haven't actually seen them again. Anyway, that was my experience of death, or mort as is known in other cultures.